Good day, dear Sacramentians. 2020 has brought us many challenges, but the lessons that it taught us will always remain in our hearts. I wish you more blessings and joy this new year 2021. This time, we are already in the fourth episode of our BSCS Library and Media Center Storytelling and Book Talk. Come and join me as we read and talk about books that contain moral lessons and at the same time are enjoyable to read. But before that, let us first have a recap. On our previous episode, we read the books entitled Dora's Starry Christmas, a scholastic book written by Christine Ricci, and Sam and the Lucky Money, also a scholastic book written by Karen Chin. And for our high school students, we talked about the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia entitled The Magician's Nephew. Now, for this episode, we have The Bird with Two Heads for Kinder Grade 1 and 2. For grades 3 to 6, we have Those Shoes. And for our book talk, we have the second book in the Chronicles of Narnia entitled The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, let us proceed to our first book. This book is published by Scholastic Incorporated. This is entitled The Bird with Two Heads, retold by Matt Gleason and illustrated by Lu Yanfang. The Bird with Two Heads, a Chinese story retold by Matt Gleason and illustrated by Lu Yanfang. Hu and Ling were best friends. As kids, they played outdoors. Now they were old. They napped in their chairs all day. One day, they had the similar dream. A voice said, "You two will never be apart." Then the old man woke up. Their dream had come true. Hu and Ling had turned into a bird with two heads. Some people would have been upset, but Hu and Ling were not. They were very happy to get out of their chairs. They flapped their wings and flew out the window. They flew into the forest. Soon, Hu and Ling got hungry, so they landed in a plum tree. They picked a plum to share. Then Ling spotted a hunter under the tree. The hunter had a bow, and he was aiming an arrow at Hu and Ling. The hunter shot his arrow, but Hu and Ling flew away just in time. "Our two heads will help us stay safe," Ling said. "Yes," Hu said. "I look one way, you look the other way. No hunter will ever surprise us." The hunter shot more arrows, but Hu and Ling dodged them all. At last, the hunter put down his bow. Hu and Ling sat down in the plum tree. Ling picked a plum. "You can have the first bite, my friend," he said. Now, before we continue, the meaning of the highlighted word "dodged" means moved out of the way. "No," said Hu. "You should eat first." The hunter watched the two heads share the plum. "Those two heads are best friends," he thought. "I shouldn't shoot such a beautiful bird." He packed up his arrows. "I must tell everyone about this." Now, children, why do you think does the hunter want to tell everyone about Hu and Ling? That's good. Let's continue. The hunter went home. He told all his friends about the bird with two heads. Soon, the whole town knew about it. In time, even the king heard the story, but he found it hard to believe. "A bird with two heads?" said the king. "How can that be?" The king called to his servants. Catch this bird and bring it to me, he said. By the way, children, the meaning of the highlighted word servants means workers whose job is to wait on and help someone. The servants had heard all about the bird. They knew it would be hard to catch. With its two heads, it was tough to surprise. So the servants made a huge net. It was big enough to cover 10 houses. They trapped the bird in the net, and they brought the bird to the king. That night, the king sat down to dinner. He brought Hu and Ling to join him. He watched how their heads shared the food. That made the king feel lonely. He had no one to share his food. Every day, he sat alone on his throne. His servants were his only company. Children, the meaning of the highlighted word company means people around you. Children, by simply looking at the picture, can you tell me what is the emotion that the king is feeling right now? Alright. Now let's move on. The king felt jealous of the heads, so he decided to punish them. "We'll see how happy you are in the dark," he said. The king put the bird in the dark basement. That made Hu and Ling really sad. To cheer themselves up, they sang songs. The king could hear their singing through the floor. It made him feel worse than ever. But even a king can't stop birds from singing. He wondered if he should kill the bird. "I don't want them dead," he thought. "I want them to be as lonely as I am." So the king sent out a message. "I want this bird cut in half. I will give half of my riches to the person who can do it. But there's one catch. The bird must not die." The word in this page is jealous. Jealous means wanting something someone else has. Let's continue. At first, this seemed impossible. How could anyone cut a bird in half without killing it? Then a young man named Cho came forward. "I have a plan," he told the king. "Let me keep the bird in my room for a week. When the week is over, the bird will be split in two." Now, children, how do you think Cho will split the bird? What do you think is his plan? Let's continue. That night, Hu and Ling were happy in Cho's room. They were still in a cage, but Ling left the windows to his room open. There was plenty of air and light. The next morning, Cho brought Hu and Ling breakfast. He set the food in their cage. Then he put his mouth next to Hu's head. He whispered in Hu's ear. "Shop, shop, shop," Cho said. Children, before we move on, the meaning of the highlighted word puzzled is confused or not able to understand. He was puzzled. "What does that mean?" he asked. But Cho wouldn't tell him. He just whispered the word over and over. Then he left the room. Ling looked at Hu. "What did Cho say to you?" Ling asked. "I wish I knew, my friend," said Hu. "I didn't understand him at all." The next morning, Cho whispered in Hu's ear again. As soon as he left, Ling asked, "Hu, what did he say?" Hu still didn't know, but this time, Ling did not believe his friend. "You know what I think?" Ling asked. I think Cho told you a secret, and you just won't tell me. No way, Hu said. I would never keep a secret from you. Then tell me what Cho keeps saying, Ling shouted. Hu said, I already told you, Ling. I don't understand what he says. Why don't you trust me? After that, the two heads were angry and hurt. They didn't talk all day. They didn't share their fruit. When Cho saw this, he smiled. His plan was working. On the third day, he whispered in Hu's ear again. As soon as Cho left, Ling said, Tell me the secret. There is no secret, Hu shouted. You liar, Ling shouted. I wish you were gone. I never want to see you again. Well, I never want to see you again either, Hu yelled. The two heads turned away from each other. Then they began to pull. They pulled so hard that their bodies split in two. They hit the sides of the cage so hard that it broke into pieces. Hu and Ling were now two separate birds. And they were free. Children, the meaning of separate is not connected. The birds flew out of Cho's window. Hu flew north. He said, Finally, I get to be alone. Ling flew south. He said, Now I'm free of that fake friend. Cho had heard the cage smash into bits. He ran into the room just as Hu and Ling flew away. He put his head in his hands. He had lost the birds and half of the king's riches. Hu decided to build a nest. He picked out a tree in the north part of the forest. While he worked, he sang. How nice, Hu told himself. I can sing any song I want. But the song did not sound as good without Ling. Soon, Hu stopped singing. Just then, something reached into the tree. A big, hairy paw knocked Hu to the ground. When he looked up, a wolf was standing over him. The wolf looked hungry, and it was growling at Hu. Hu began to shake with fear. He wished Ling were with him. This never would have happened, but Ling was far away in the south. Ling picked a plum. Living alone is great, he told himself. This plum is all mine. But Ling could eat only half, and the plum did not taste as sweet as usual. Suddenly, Ling felt something hit his back. He tried to flap his wings, but they were caught in a net. A hunter's hands pulled the net tight around Ling. This is the end, thought Ling. As he struggled to get free, he thought of Hu. The meaning of the highlighted word struggled is tried very hard to do something. He wished he were with his friend. The hunter carried Ling north for many miles. Suddenly, Ling heard Hu's voice. He sounded scared. Ling looked through the net. There was Hu, trapped by a wolf. Hu! Shouted Ling. It's me! The wolf looked up in surprise. It saw the hunter headed its way. The wolf forgot about Hu. Away it ran into the forest. Hu flew right at the hunter's head. He beat his wings on the hunter's face. The hunter waved his arms and screamed. He dropped the net. Ling was free. The friends flew to safety in the trees. They felt lucky to be alive. They felt even luckier to be friends again. Old friend, said Ling, life was so lonely without you. Hu said, I'm so glad you're back. There was no way for Hu and Ling to be one bird again. They had separate bodies, but for the rest of their lives, they lived together in the forest. And that is the end of a very inspiring story entitled The Bird with Two Heads, retold by Matt Gleason. In this book, we have seen the importance of living in harmony with one another. We need the company of the people who are dear to us in order to be happy in this life. You, who are your company? Your company are your family, friends, teachers, and loved ones. You have to keep them and make them feel that you love them as they love you every single day. What do you think of the story The Bird with Two Heads? Kindly share us your thoughts by typing them on the comment section down below. Our second book is also from Scholastic Incorporated. This is entitled Those Shoes, written by Mary Beth Bowles and illustrated by Noah Jones. In the beginning of the story, we can see a child looking up on a billboard with big words saying, "Buy these shoes." I have dreams about those shoes. Black high tops, two white stripes. Grandma, I want them. There's no room for want around here. Just need, Grandma says. And what you need are new boots for winter. Brandon T comes to school in those shoes. He says he's the fastest runner now, not me. I was always the fastest before those shoes came along. Nate comes to school in those shoes. Antonio and I count how many times Nate goes to the bathroom, 7 times in one day, just so he can walk up and down the hall real slow. Next, Alan, Jacoby, and Terrence each get a pair. Then one day in the middle of kickball, one of my shoes comes apart. Looks like you could use a new pair, Jeremy, Mr. Alfred, the guidance counselor, says. He brings out a box of shoes and other stuff he has for kids need things. He helps me find the only shoes that are my size. Velcro, like the ones my little cousin Marshall wears. They have an animal on them from a cartoon I don't think any kid ever watched. And children, by looking at the picture, can you guess what is the reason why his classmates are laughing? Let's move on. When I come back to the classroom, Alan Jacoby takes one look at Mr. Alfred's shoes and laughs. And so do Terrence, Brandon T, and everyone else. The only kid not laughing is Antonio Parker. At home, Grandma says, "How kind of Mr. Alfred." I nod and turn my back. I'm not going to cry about any damn shoes. But when I'm writing my spelling words later, every word looks like the word shoes. And my grip is so tight on my pencil, I think it might bust. On Saturday, Grandma says, "Let's check out those shoes you're wanting so much. I got a little bit of money set aside. Might be enough, you never know." At the shoe store, Grandma turns those shoes over so she can check the price. When she sees it, she sits down heavy. "Maybe they wrote it down wrong," I say. Grandma shakes her head. Then I remember the thrift shops. What if there's a rich kid who outgrew his, or got 2 pairs for Christmas and had to give one of them away? We ride the bus to the first thrift shop. Black cowboy boots, pink slippers, sandals, high heels, every kind of shoes except the ones I want. We ride the bus to the second thrift shop. Not a pair of those shoes inside. Around the corner is the third thrift shop. I see something in the window. Then children, can you guess what the child sees? Black shoes with 2 white stripes, high tops, perfect shape, $2.50. Those shoes. My heart is pounding hard as I take off my shoes and hitch up my baggy socks. How exciting, Grandma says. What size are they? I shove my foot into the first shoe, curling my toes to get my heel in. I don't know, but I think they fit. Grandma kneels on the floor and feels for my toes at the end of the shoe. Oh, Jeremy, she says, I can't spend good money on shoes that don't fit. I pull the other shoe on and try to walk around. They're okay, I say, holding my breath and praying that my toes will fall off right then and there. But my toes don't fall off. I buy them anyway with my own money, and I squeeze them on and limp to the bus stop. At home, few days later, Grandma puts a new pair of snow boots in my closet and doesn't say a word about my two big feet shuffling around in my two small shoes. Sometimes shoes stretch, I say. Grandma gives me a hug. I check every day, but those shoes don't stretch. I have to wear Mr. Alfred's to school instead. One day during math, I glance at Antonio's shoes. One of them is taped up, and his feet look smaller than mine. After school, I head to the park to think. Antonio is there, the only kid who didn't laugh at my Mr. Alfred shoes. We shoot baskets. A loose piece of tape on Antonio's shoes smacks the concrete every time he jumps. I think I'm not going to do it. Children, what do you think is the boy thinking when he said that I'm not going to do it? Can you guess what it is? Let's see. We leap off the swings. I'm not going to do it. We race from one end of the playground to the other. I'm not going to do it, I say. Do what? Antonio says, breathing hard. Grandma calls me for supper and invites Antonio over too. After supper, he spies my shoes. How come you don't wear them? Antonio asks. I shrug. My hands are sweaty. I can feel him wishing those shoes were his. That night, I am awake for a long time thinking about Antonio. When morning comes, I try on my shoes one last time. Before I can change my mind, the shoes are in my coat. Snow is beginning to fall as I run across the street to Antonio's apartment. I put the shoes in front of his door, push the doorbell, and run. At school, Antonio is smiling big in his brand new shoes. I feel happy when I look at his face and mad when I look at Mr. Alfred's shoes. But later, when it's time for recess, something happens. Everywhere there is snow. Leave your shoes in the hall and change into your boots, the teacher announces. Leave your shoes in the hall. It's then I remember what I have in my backpack. New boots. New black boots that no kid has ever worn before. Standing in line to go to recess, Antonio leans forward and says, "Thanks." I smile and give him a nudge. And that's the end of a very wonderful story entitled Those Shoes, written by Maribeth Bowles and illustrated by Noah Jones. Sometimes, what you have is what other children wish for. You have a decent home. Other families just take shelter on the streets. You have enough food to eat. Other people have nothing. You have gadgets and internet connection for your online studies, but other children did not even have the opportunity to enroll for this school year. And yet, sometimes we still complain. Children, never forget to be thankful for all the blessings that we have and take every opportunity to help, because sharing is caring. What do you think of the story The Shoes by Maribeth Bowles? Kindly share us your thoughts by typing them on the comment section below. Now for our high school students, let's talk about the second book in the Chronicles of Narnia, entitled The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Do you still remember the wardrobe that Diggory built on the first book? How about Aslan and Queen Jadis? How about Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter Pevensie? Do these names sound familiar? In the second book in the Chronicles of Narnia, you will be able to know them better. Welcome to Narnia, a mysterious place where not everyone is privileged to go. A place where it is always winter because of the White Witch, Queen Jadis. Lucy discovered Narnia when she decided to explore the house of the old professor. She saw a huge wardrobe and went in it. But before she knew it, she was already in Narnia. Lucy went back after a few minutes and told her siblings about what she found beyond the wardrobe. Peter, Susan, and Edmund would not believe in Lucy until they tried to enter the enormous wardrobe themselves. That is the start of the Pevensie siblings' adventure in Narnia. As they go through the dense forest covered in snow, they discovered a lot of things, starting from the first character Lucy met, namely Mr. Tumnus, the fawn, to Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, to Father Christmas, to the White Witch dark plans, and to Aslan's battle to save Narnia. C.S. Lewis, or Jack as he was called in real life, was a Catholic. That is why in the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Magician's Nephew, you will discover that it was inspired by the first book in the Bible called the Genesis, while the second book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, clearly depicts the story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In this book also, you will know or you will discover that the power of evil is temporary, while the power of good always triumphs. The way C.S. Lewis wrote these books was so creative that it can make you imagine that you are in every event in the story, watching up close and personal. Yes, you might think or you might know that these chronicles were already put into movie long time ago, but I really recommend you to read books because not every detail printed in the books are put in the movie. So there you have it, children. I hope it inspires you to read the classic novel series The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Thank you so much, and see you again on the next episode of our BSCS Library and Media Center Storytelling and Book Talk. Goodbye!